Ladies and gentlemen, now it's Too Late with Alan Mosley.
Is it though? Is it?
Yeah.
Guys, welcome back to another episode of It's Too Late. I am your host, Alan Mosley, joined, as always, by the number one producer in late night. It's Dave Willimowski. Hey! Dave, how you doing?
Doing all right.
Dave! Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
What did we even spend the last hour doing? Who knows? I've already forgotten
I
it.
don't know. I thought I wasn't allowed to touch anything. All right.
And I don't have my copy paste because it's just numbers and symbols. It's the crazy. It's nuts. Maybe we should have done that countdown after all.
Yeah, we kind of need that. I think we need to ease into it.
We spend all this time getting ready, but we're not ready. We're not ready until exactly 3 more minutes elapses, and then
you need that.
And then we're totally ready. Well, what I'm doing is I'm just trying to make sure everybody sees that we're live. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because I don't do this
you
for
came in hot.
me. Yeah, I've already seen this episode. I already know what's going to happen, so I don't need to see it. I need them to see it. You know.
Oh, you never really know.
How are you doing, by the way? You doing good? When's
I'm doing
is
all right,
it
yeah.
blizzardy and snowy up there yet?
It's just starting, like right now.
It's
Like,
just
hit
starting right
freezing. Yeah. It's been warm. Hence
Okay.
the haircut.
What? Oh, okay. I meant to say. God, now I feel bad, Dave. I didn't even mention
It's all right.
because you look the way you normally look when you guys like come here for the event, and it's you're anticipating 100 degrees and humidity. Yeah, so I feel like you might have jumped the gun on this, don't you guys? Can't you still have like a bunch of blizzards between now and like February?
Oh yeah, it's just getting bad. This is when it really starts hitting.
Wow.
So,
well,
it'll grow back. We'll be all right.
You were particularly adventurous this year. Us, on the other hand, today was the day where the stars could align, where the moisture was coming in, and there was a cold front, and there might be snow in the south, and then it was like 45 degrees. So,
hey, wow, you had the same weather as us.
Yeah, so it rained, but it's nowhere near cold enough, you know, for anything to happen. On that note, I want to move on here before we bring on tonight's guest. Sure enough, literally right before we started tonight's show, I saw in the news that apparently there was a vote in the Senate to restrict military engagement in Venezuela, just in general, unless they have a declaration from Congress. And the resolution failed.
Oh,
which is wild to me, because that's literally the Congress saying, I know it's our responsibility, but we're just not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. And so in the spirit of my good friends over at the 10th Amendment Center, I'm going to attempt to distill my latest article that came out this very day on this very subject. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to try to do a presentation that's probably not quite as good as Michael Bolden's, but I'm going to do my best. During a recent interview with the New York Times, President Trump was asked whether anything could limit his use of vast military and economic power as he saw fit. Now, his answer was kind of breathtakingly candid. Take a look at this.
Is there anything that could stop you if you wanted to?
Yeah, there's one thing, my own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop. And,
not international
and that's
law.
very good. I don't need international law.
He doesn't need it. Wow. Now, these comments came amid reports of U.S. military raids in Venezuela and open discussions in the White House about a range of options to force the sale of Greenland. Now, morally, a leader claiming to be constrained only by his personal sense of right and wrong should alarm anyone who values the rule of law. But a more concrete problem exists. The perspective reflects a misunderstanding or a willful rejection of the constitutional design of the American Republic. The U.S. Constitution was deliberately constructed to prevent the very scenario that President Trump is describing: a single individual unilaterally dragging the nation into conflict. To prove this, one need look no further than the writings of the framers and the text of the Constitution itself. Now, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution vests Congress with the power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land or water. Congress also holds the purse. No appropriation of money to support an army may be for more than 2 years. Article 2, Section 2 designates the president as the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy, but only when those forces are called into the actual service of the United States. Now, as Alexander Hamilton explained in Federalist number 69, the president's commander-in-chief role amounts to nothing more than the supreme command and direction of the military and naval forces. The powers to declare war or raise armies appertain to the legislature. The delegates at the Constitutional Convention debated these powers explicitly. The Committee of Detail originally gave Congress the power to make war. Keep that in mind, to make war. But on August 17th, 1787, James Madison and Elbridge Gerry objected that this wording might allow the president to act unilaterally. They moved to substitute the phrase make war to declare war. Their amendment passed by an 8-1 vote. Madison later explained that the change reflected a belief that the executive is the branch of power most interested in war and most prone to it. So the Constitution, with studied care, vested the question of war in the legislature. Gerry argued that entrusting war to a single office contradicted the goals of a republic. Now, Thomas Jefferson, writing from Paris in 1789, exulted that the new Constitution had given America one effectual check to the dog of war by transferring the power of declaring war from the executive to the legislative body, from those who are to spend to those who are to pay. For Jefferson, this change was essentially to prevent rulers from dragging nations into wars to serve their own ambitions or to curry favor with special interests. James Madison went even further. In his Helvidius Essays, number 1793, written during a debate over presidential authority to issue a neutrality proclamation, Madison argued that, quote, "In no part of the Constitution is more wisdom to be found than in the clause which confides the question of war or peace to the legislature. War," he warned, "is the true nurse of executive aggrandizement. In war, the executive unlocks the public treasure, dispenses offices and honors, and directs a physical force whose laurels will encircle his brow. Because the executive is tempted by ambition, avarice, and the honorable or venial love of fame, Madison concluded that the strongest passions and the most dangerous weaknesses of the human breast conspire against peace. Consequently, free states have always sought to disarm this propensity by denying war-making powers to a single man. Now, George Washington himself, the first person to occupy the office Trump now holds, understood these constraints. In 1793, facing calls to launch an expedition against the Creek Nation, he reminded South Carolina's governor that the Constitution vests the power of declaring war with Congress. Therefore, no offensive expedition of importance can be undertaken until after they shall deliberated upon the subject and authorized such a measure. Now, that's the father of the country who did not consider his own morality a sufficient check. He deferred to Congress before initiating war. Outside the convention, the ratifying debates reveal a similar consensus. At the Pennsylvania Convention, James Wilson explained that the new Constitution would not hurry us into war. It is calculated to guard against it. It will not be in the power of a single man or a single body of men to involve us in such distress, for the important power of declaring war is vested in the legislature at large. Because declarations must be made with the concurrence of the House of Representatives, Wilson concluded that nothing but our national interest can draw us into war. Despite the clarity of the founders' design, American history after World War II in particular is largely a chronicle of presidents initiating hostilities without formal declarations. Wars from Korea to Vietnam, Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and the list goes on, proceeds on presidential say-so. Presidents invoke an inherent commander-in-chief power, and Congress largely acquiesces. The War Powers Resolution of 1973 was supposed to restore balance. It requires presidents to notify Congress when hostilities begin and to terminate combat within 60 to 90 days absent legislative approval. But presidents treat it as merely an advisory. Reports are filed that actions are merely consistent with the resolution, and withdrawal deadlines are ignored. Ending unauthorized wars would require legislation capable of overcoming a presidential veto, which we know is nearly impossible. Lawmakers authorize funds for long conflicts with little scrutiny and rarely tie money to specific missions or sunsetting old authorizations. Fear of being labeled soft on defense discourages them from using their leverage. Madison's warnings about war were not simple abstractions. He wrote that war is the parent of armies, producing debts, taxes, and concentrated power that undermine Republican governments. Jefferson called war, quote, the greatest scourge of mankind. Washington urged Americans to cultivate peace and harmony. And even Alexander Hamilton noted that the president's role is a command, not an initiation. The Constitution's designers distrusted concentrated power. As John Adams warned, there is danger from all men. The only maxim of a free government ought to be to trust no man living with power to endanger the public liberty. War-making decisions were therefore placed in Congress to prevent a single individual from unleashing conflict. The Constitution does not rely on personal virtue. It constrains presidents through law and legislative deliberation. So what's the answer? Well, to preserve a republic of laws, Congress must do these things. First, it must reclaim its authority, debate, and pass specific authorizations before wars begin. Enforce withdrawal deadlines, repeal obsolete AUMFs, and attach sunset clauses to new ones. Deferring to presidential will in matters of war is not patriotic. It is a dereliction of duty. Citizens must also demand adherence to the Constitution. A populace that conflates support for troops with support for intervention will find itself perpetually at war. The Constitution was crafted to prevent war decisions from resting on presidential morality. Trump's claim that his mind is the only limit on his power is constitutionally illiterate. The remedy is not a better personality in the Oval Office, but a return to the processes of Madison, Jefferson, Washington, and their colleagues designed. As Madison reminded Jefferson, if war decisions are left to the executive, quote, the people are cheated out of the best ingredients in their government, the safeguards of peace. With that said, guys, we're going to be back with Joseph Solis-Mullen of the Libertarian Institute. Right after this commercial break. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Our guest this evening, making his third appearance on the program, is a political scientist. I would never call my best friend such a terrible thing. He's an economist. He's also the Ralph Raico Fellow at the Libertarian Institute, as well as the author of this book right here, The Fake China Threat and Its Very Real Danger. Joseph Solis-Mullen, the undefeated food quiz champion. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Alan, it's great to be here again.
Well, I've got another one for you. We're going to save that for the end. But before we get into it, Joseph, I wanted to take a moment because I was catching up with you on social media, and I understand that you have a whole cavalcade of projects in the works for 2026 and beyond. What do you got cooking?
That's true, I do. So we're in the final stages over at the Institute of my third book with the Institute, which is a history of classical liberalism. And it's called The Classical Liberalism, The Rise, Fall, and Future of an Idea. And we're in the final stages of editing and putting that thing together. I reckon it'll be out in the next month and a half. Then I've been publishing these long form essays on the Libertarian Institute's blog about the intersection of war and the making of the American state, which just grew out of some doctoral work that I had done. And then I also wrote this manuscript for a book that I've been fishing around trying to get some interest in, that revisits the Hunt Brothers Silver Corner of the late 70s, early 80s. It's something that I've always been interested in because I think it's generally kind of misunderstood in sort of the popular consciousness, and there's not really an academic treatment of it. And so I wrote a reinterpretation of those events through an Austrian lens. And I thought now is a real timely now is a good time for it, simply because there's a lot of interest in silver again. Silver is at levels now that it didn't even reach those levels during the silver corner, but for a long time, that was where it peaked, was when you had that squeeze back in the late 70s, early 80s. Yes, I had that one. And then I am also working on this book, this manuscript for a history of Sino-American relations. So it's like a strictly diplomatic history treatment of Sino-American relations, just because I feel like a lot of the treatments tend to be very one side or the other. And I'm trying to, certainly writing as an American academic, to take a more neutral stance. Mm-hmm. And then I have this sort of never ending book. It's actually my dissertation, but I'm trying to rework it to be like a readable book. And it's the history of U.S. foreign relations from 1865 to 1898. So the period after the end of the Civil War, right before the start of the Spanish-American War. So those are the things that I have going on. So you can expect definitely one book this year. Possibly two if I can find a taker for the Hunt Brothers Silver Corner Revisited, an Austrian reinterpretation, because it's pretty done. I call it a manuscript, but I really don't like rewriting things, so I don't know how other people's writing process is, but for me, many years ago, I stopped doing like a rough draft and then like a first draft and then like a final draft. I write every line like it's the final draft, because I always found it much harder to go back and rewrite it better. I try to write it the first time. So if I can find a taker for this manuscript, it'd move quick.
I feel like, because I know we have a list of topics to discuss, but I can't help myself. I have to ask you about this, because I've been trying to get back into writing recently, and I'm nowhere near at the prodigious level of writer as you are. But I do wonder about that. Different people, I'm sure everybody kind of has their own little little flavor of how they get their inspiration, how they go about writing. But I'm like you. I'm not a big, and I don't say this in an arrogant way. It's not like, oh, it's just the prose just come straight out of, from my brain to God's ears. It's more that just I if anything, if I'm not exactly 100% sure about where I'm at and what I want to write, I don't write at all, which is probably not a good thing. I probably should get more material to work with, because that was actually the first question that popped into my mind as you were speaking just now was, it's kind of like, do you have a lot of different topics that you have interest in, that you've written some on, and sometimes it's like, what am I going to grab out of the closet, this week and kind of revisit, versus, looking, putting your finger in the wind and finding totally new things to kind of evaluate and write on, which may also mean educating yourself on totally new things. And then also, so that would be part one. And then part two is, which you kind of already dug into, being, I'm also not a big, I might brainstorm a little bit. Sure, I have an idea of what I want to write about, but when I start typing, I basically just go until I'm done. And when I'm done, I'm like, it's like I emotionally move on from it. That sounds really weird. It's like as soon as I'm done typing an article and I hand it to you, I walk away from it. For all I care, you can put your name. I don't care anymore. I'm done with it. I've moved on from it. So how are you on that?
So I'll address that last point first, because for me, I am very much the same way. These projects are works of love, but once I'm done with it, I've already invested a significant amount of myself and my time in it. And that final copy editing phase is like, oh gosh, it brings me no joy. I actually viscerally dislike it. Like, I'm done. I had one sort of negative experience pretty early on with that. It was back in 5 or 6 years ago, but I was asked to contribute a book chapter to this Palgrave Macmillan text, which is somewhere back there. And I had never dealt with a big corporate publisher before. And they gave me a deadline that was a month later, right? So I worked day and night to get this 60-page chapter done, right? Hand it in. I don't hear anything for months, many months, 6 or 8 months. Then they get back to me with all these different changes and revisions, and we want to revisit this. And it's so then I have to dive back in and re-immerse myself in this. And we went back and forth multiple times. It was terrible. Yes, I'm very much the same way. Once I'm done with it, I'm done. I just don't want to talk about it anymore. That particular project. That being said, I do have a variety of topics. As you said in the intro, I'm a political scientist. I went to graduate school at the University of Illinois. I'm an economist. I went to school at the University of Missouri, and I'm also an historian. So I have all these different things that are, I view them as kind of complementary. I view myself very much as an interdisciplinary scholar. That's what my PhD is in, is history, is actually. But so I have the ability to just kind of move between topics. So for example, the economy and economic history, which I generally view through an Austrian lens. So there's a whole array of topics there that if I feel like writing about the economy that day, or a thought about the economy or economic history or something has popped up, can go that way. There's also the history of classical liberalism, anarcho-capitalist political theory. I've got that going on, which is more in a political science, political theory direction. Then there's just kind of history more generally. I do a lot of post-revisionist critiques, oftentimes related to war. I've written a lot about the outbreak of World War I, because that's always kind of presented as the one war that just kind of had to happen, because there's a scale and there's peace and there's war, and so many weights just kept getting put on the war side that it was inevitable that eventually there'd be some war, which is, there's some truth to that, but it was not not totally determined the outcome. And then of course there's China, which just that became kind of a pet interest of mine about 6-7 years ago. And actually I teach a course on Chinese history that actually just started today, actually.
Oh, okay.
Thankfully that one's online. So the students did not, I'm sick for those who can't tell by listening to my super congested voice today. So the only class that really got to do anything today was my China history class, because that one's online. But yeah, so I just able to just kind of do a lot of those things. Obviously I write about like foreign policy and stuff and critique that from like a political economy and public choice perspective. So yeah, that definitely helps having a lot of different things that you can write about, because I do put out about 6 articles a month. So
sure,
that is helpful.
Well, in the interest of avoiding burnout, which is something that I have to deal with, I'm now going to proceed to ask you repeatedly about the Chinese perspective on a whole bunch of topics. so I have to apologize in advance, but the first thing that I have on my list, we have talked in recent weeks about the stuff going on south of here in Venezuela. We've had Kyle Anzalone and Dave DeCamp have both been on the show in the last couple of weeks, and we've touched on the topic. But one thing that we never dove into was the whole kind of strategic foreign policy perspective as it relates to China and Russia. And it's interesting because, of course, as like-minded individuals like you and I are, we know that if the regime wants to affect change globally and they say it's for moral reasons or democratic reasons, we pretty much always know that's a lie. So we can go ahead and push that one out the window. If it's for resource reasons, like natural resources, then that's certainly not morally justifiable necessarily, but at least I can understand it. Like, oh, okay, you want oil, got it. I know what you're doing. But then there's the more kind of strategic foreign policy perspective. And so one of the things that you've seen bandied about the last week or two has been, well, be damned what the Venezuelan people do or do not think or want or have coming to them. What we actually have to do is we have to stake our claim in this region, and we have to control these resources, because otherwise, Joseph, they're going to be exploited by those evil Chinese. And that's what we and of course I know obviously I'm laying it on a little bit thick here, but what do you think about it? What do you think of that? The explanation of, well, the intervention in Venezuela or anywhere else for that matter is a good thing because of course China is an evil empire, and if we don't, they will.
Well, I mean, I think on one level. So let's start with this. So obviously, Venezuela has not, for many years, been a pliable partner to Washington, right? So when you're looking at how secure is a regime's position in the world, especially if you are a small to medium-sized state, we could probably do some very interesting regression analyses to see how likely you are to have some regime change happen here. It's been coming for a while. I mean, there were increasingly aggressive attempts over, going back to the first Trump administration, and China was the largest recipient of Venezuela's oil. China was and still is to a degree trying to invest and build relationships, especially export markets in South America. And this is something that Washington has increasingly said is just not going to be tolerated. This just isn't something that they're going to allow. And you've seen a lot of the pretense dropped over the last several years. And I do think, and I think Scott was the one that first said this, but that's why the security establishment kind of hated Trump and still kind of hates him to a degree, is because he says the part that you aren't supposed to say out loud. You talked about like having those rhetorical arabesques to, you know, freedom and democracy and stuff. And Trump just ruins it by saying, you know, we're going to take your stuff and you're going to like it because we're big and strong and you're weak. And that's how the world works. They just don't like that. They don't like him talking like that. Even if that, you know, kind of always was the reality of things. So I do think that there was a very serious geostrategic component to his desire to engage in some regime change in Venezuela. That being said, the Chinese government, even though they lost someone who they had invested a good deal of time and energy in cultivating a relationship with. In fact, the Chinese had a delegation there that afternoon. They had a trade representative meet with Maduro that afternoon, and then that night he got grabbed.
That seems dangerous.
Yeah, that was my thought too, is like, what if a Chinese national got killed? Most people don't remember this because it happened, you know, 26 years ago. But when the U.S. started bombing Belgrade, they accidentally hit, well, they say it was an accident. The Chinese government has always said it wasn't an accident. I'm not going to take a position there. But they killed some Chinese nationals, and it was a huge hullabaloo. So, yeah, very dangerous. But already, you know, Beijing has said, first of all, they've said that this is, you know, a violation of, you know, state sovereignty, and we want to uphold the sovereignty of states, and the United States should stop acting like a global hegemon. But at the same time, they said, you know, we're ready to work with whoever's in charge in Venezuela. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole resources thing, you know, this has been in the news a lot. I mean, Venezuela's crude is very, very heavy. It takes a lot of refining. You know, oil prices would just need to be a lot higher for it to be profitable to do anything with that. And Trump has said he wants oil prices down to $50 a barrel. 50 is not making money.
Yeah.
50 is too low. You know, maybe if it's super light, like Saudi crude that's like basically ready to go. So, yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of geopolitical reasoning behind this. This is part of the reason, too, for Trump's positioning over Greenland. What does he say? He just says, well, if we don't have it, China and Russia are going to have it. And, you know, the Wall Street Journal last week ran this whole thing about danger in the Arctic. China is going to, you know, be able to sail to Europe soon through the Arctic. And they present it as like, you know, really scary, you know, when they're talking about like China being able to like send goods there and stuff. Like, oh, this is so dangerous. They're going to be able to send consumer products to Europe through the Arctic if we don't do something.
Well, let me ask you this, because kind of putting on more of the economist hat than the foreign policy hat. Something that's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, especially with the posturing that the current administration is doing, is if your goal is to starve, you know, say Russia and China, and especially China, of resources because you're trying to weaken them. But we also know, like, look, China has made economic strides in recent years, but a lot of people believe that's also a bubble economy. We would know, right? We would know something about a bubble economy around here in the United States. But it seems to me, no, don't get me wrong. I think we probably agree a lot on economic principle, but I also can at least respect that the reason why everyone wants to keep kicking the can down the road, because it's not good for business if either of these major powers has a significant economic collapse. And either one. If China's economy collapses, that would be bad for business for the United States. That'd be bad for business for the world. And vice versa. If there was another Great Depression in the United States, that would be bad globally. And so with that said, it's never made any sense to me that one major power would want to intentionally try to tank the economy of another major power, knowing that we live in a global economy and we're all kind of tied together.
Well, that's true, of course. I feel the same way about that. There are real limits to how much they can do to each other without endangering themselves.
Yeah.
Right now. And I think that's a good thing, because as you said, if either, or heaven forbid, both these economies were to go into serious trouble, this would be very, very bad for the world. So let's talk a little bit about this. There are limited things that either side can do to damage the other. And let me just hit you with some numbers here. So a lot of people will say, well, Donald Trump is making China is winning the trade battle with China, because look at the US-China trade deficit. It's shrunk. It's shrunk in the last year. Trump is clearly winning. He knows what he's doing here. Okay. That's true. That's true. However, the United States' trade deficit with the rest of the world, including China, has never been higher. It's now over $1 trillion. At the same time, while China's trade surplus with the United States has gone down, its trade surplus with the rest of the world has also never been higher. And a lot of what is happening here is what's called the China Plus One model. This is where Chinese companies say, okay, our customers in the United States can't get this directly from us anymore because of this trade war that's going on. So instead, it's going to come from Vietnam, from China. Or it's going to come from Taiwan, from China. Or Mexico. And the reason for this is that the Chinese manufacturing industry is too tied into global trade for anyone to be able to diversify out of China completely right away. Even major U.S. defense contractors, told the Senate, we can't shut off our China supply chains. We won't be able to make anything for years. So on the other side there, China has at its disposal sort of a unique pressure point, and that is that it is basically the only large-scale processor of these rare industrial metals that are needed to make things like batteries and microchips. And so it has been able to now, in retaliation, it should be noted, this is in retaliation, selectively withhold supplies of these as its own form of pressure. But the thing is it can't go super hard on that because it does need to sell those, right? These companies, China's economy is not doing super swell. They're fighting some deflation, which the regime in Beijing feels towards inflation the same way that our own regime feels towards inflation. They want inflation. They want some nice, moderate, every year inflation. They're a huge debtor. They want inflation. They're fighting deflation. They're fighting diminishing returns. They're fighting a lack of consumer spending. So there's a limit to how much the Chinese government can do without hurting its own economy. And the same with the Trump administration. Even though he's trying to go really, really hard, American corporations are just saying, yeah, we got to stay in business, bud. So we're just going to buy this, Vietnamese stuff, if that makes sense, even though it's obviously Chinese.
Sure.
Right. When you break down the numbers, you look and you see oh, wow, imports from Vietnam are up 7% this quarter. How weird. Did some new businesses open in Vietnam or something that American businesses really need stuff from? No. So China's economy has its problems. We've talked about those before. I just mentioned some of them now. The United States economy, I'm sorry, has its own problems. Again, I think there's a limited amount of damage that they can do to each other without imperiling their own economies, which would, of course, put their respective regimes in power in jeopardy. Trump is already looking ahead to the midterms, right? That's why he's now investigating Jerome Powell and the Fed, trying to pressure them to lower interest rates. He just gave this speech today saying, look, when the economy is, hitting, all-time highs, now's the time to be cutting interest rates. Donald Trump, the economist.
Yeah.
No, I can't believe it. You know, I never would have thought anyone could get me on the side of Jerome Powell. But
yeah,
when Donald Trump starts talking about interest rates, I'm like, thank goodness for the safe, steady hand of Jerome Powell at the wheel.
Well,
yeah, because who knows who we're going to get as a replacement? We could get something really bad, because the last time that a Fed chair was under the thumb of the person sitting in the White House was Arthur Burns under Richard Nixon. And that was the source of the skyrocketing inflation that happened in the 1970s. Everyone wants to blame it on, well, there was the oil shock, and well, there were some crop failures, and well, there was this. It was like, yeah, he also like quadrupled the money stock.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's also a huge problem.
Well, we're gonna have to figure out a way. You know, maybe this will be a future article or essay to, you know, everyone's heard of mutually assured destruction, and we need to work on mutually assured success, because thank you for that breakdown. It was still amazes me that I guess it's just brinksmanship. I don't know. You know, I guess these are just the games you play, Joseph, when you're the leader of the free world or the leader of another major country on earth, that you have this brinksmanship with other nations, but you know that if you were to cross the red line, then you just destroyed yourself and you destroyed half the world, and so it just doesn't make sense to constantly be posturing in such a way. But since you mentioned the phrase, we having no idea what the replacement's going to be, there's something that I know that you and I would love to touch on before we run out of time tonight. And that, of course, is college football. And specifically, since I have both a political scientist and an economist on the show tonight, as well as a Mizzou fan, but we won't hold that against you, I wanted to talk a little bit about the NIL and the transfer portal. And what I have always said to people is this is killing the golden goose. This is killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. That college football, which is an institution that's over a century old, which by American standards, this is an old institution, being still a young country as we are. And it's a multi-billion-dollar business. It was a multi-billion-dollar business long before NIL and transfer portals existed. And it seems, I remember going back, I don't have the court cases right in front of me, but I know that you'll remember there was the of course there was the initial court cases that had to do with video games, right? It was talking about NCAA college football video game and saying, well, players should be paid for their names and likenesses. And when that ruling came down, I remember thinking I'll fully admit, I remember thinking to myself, well, who am I to say that these, you know, they're not kids, they're young gentlemen, and who am I to say that they shouldn't be paid for their name and likeness? Because look how much money these colleges and universities make off of their health and well-being. But there were naysayers that said it's not about that. It's that the way the system works is that this is going to be ripping open Pandora's box, and in a very short period of time, you're going to see the whole system turn on its head. And sure enough, in a relatively few number of years, we now have the modern day instant transfer portal and NIL. I had one example to throw up on the screen just because you probably be more familiar with it. That's Mizzou linebacker Damon Wilson, who, when he transferred from the University of Georgia to Missouri, then Georgia sued him for $390,000 for alleged NIL violations that they say he was under a contractual obligation with them. And we're using a whole bunch of terminology that didn't exist in the world of amateur sports, right? That was the whole point of trying to keep this out of collegiate athletics. And sure enough, and you may come down on it wherever you want to come down, and I want to give you the floor to tell me what you think on all of it. All I will say before I turn it over to you is there were people who I use the analogy of Sarah Palin used to say she could see Russia from her house, and everybody called her an idiot. But actually, Russia is only like 50 miles from Alaska, because the map doesn't just go east; it also goes west. For people who don't know how a globe works. There were people who said, oh, no, this court case is a disaster. It's going to destroy college football. It's going to make it all about money, and the game won't be the same ever again. And I'll be darned if those people aren't starting to look like they were proven right. What is your take on all that?
Well, I do remember the O'Bannon case, and I was one of those people who felt like, okay, these guys' names, image, likenesses, they're being used. Mm-hmm. They're not being paid for it. Should college athletes be paid? I thought, sure. We should come up with a sensible system, because these are young men and women. I'm just going to keep with football. These are young men. They're here at a usually a publicly funded academic institution. So like football shouldn't be like the primary thing here, but like, should they be able to be getting paid if they are bringing significant value to the university? Sure. But what we wound up with was a system where, okay, before, the schools and the coaching staffs had all the power and the players had none. Now we've shifted completely the other direction, where now the players have virtually all of the power and the coaches basically have none. I just think that, look, it's going to be difficult to go entirely back and restart this thing. I think the first thing to do is put some sensible rules in place to get guys to stop jumping from school to school every single year. Think maybe we need to talk about like eligibility too. Like, I look at that Indiana team, and it's like a bunch of 23-year-old dudes beating the heck out of a bunch of 19-year-old kids, and it's like, I don't know about this, you know. And then my wife's a University of Michigan grad, and so in our house we watch the Tigers and we watch Wolverines, and the Michigan Wolverines had like a pretty good basketball team last year, and I saw their game was on the other night, so I flipped television on, and I'm looking at the floor and I'm like, who are all these guys? Whole team's new, right? And it's just not very good. It's just not very good for the sport. I don't really think it's that good for the players either. I mean, you're talking about leaving school mid-year if you're football, right?
Sure. Yeah.
As soon as football season ends, you're jumping to a new school, dropping, you know, I don't know. I feel like maybe there needs to be some kind of rule, like if you get like one free transfer basically, and then after that you're going to be penalized a year of eligibility or something like that, you know. Because yes, there is a problem too with like, you know, is this going to lead to just, I don't know. You saw the playoffs, right?
Sure.
Those early games where they had like the automatic qualifying bids and they just got absolutely destroyed, right? Yeah. It's like, I don't know.
This is what I'll say. My thing on it is like, because if you're saying, well, like, what's the answer? I feel like, because it's kind of that situation where to go back you have to go forward, or to go forward you have to go back type thing, where I think that it's going to be impossible to put a lid on it. And so since I think it's going to be impossible to put a lid on it, I say you just go the whole way and you make it completely contractually obligated down to the player, exactly like the NFL is. And the reason I say that is because, by golly, if we sign an 18-year-old to be our new quarterback, let's say, and we're going to pay him, you know, $5 million a year, but we have him sign, let's say, a 3-year contract, because after 3 years, you might go to the NFL, right? Or, you know, whatever. So after 3 years, either we're going to know what kind of player you are, or you're going to go pro. So if you're amazing, you go pro. If you're okay and you're having a good time, you're going to stay here. If you're not okay and you're not having a good time, then we probably don't want you anymore either, right? So you have to sign a multiple year deal exactly the same way that most free agents in the NFL would sign. Most deals are not 1-year deals, at least for star players. They're not going to be. And exactly like in the NFL, look, If you decide that you're going to hold out, or I'm just going to refuse to play for this school ever again, I'm going to go to school somewhere else. And my answer would be, well, that's great. You can go to school somewhere else, but we now own the rights to your competitive years in this sport, in the same way that I know today in the NFL, Mike Tomlin stepped down from Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, we know stepped down is a turn of phrase, but he did technically step down, which means technically the Pittsburgh Steelers still own the rights to his contract as a coach, meaning that if he did want to go coach somewhere else in the next couple of years, they would have to negotiate with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I feel like, now that makes me sound like I'm being a hard ass, I feel like, because it feels like, look, we were just trying to help the players get paid a little cash because they're going out there risking life and limb. I get that. I totally do. But if we're going to play big boy ball, then by goodness, you're signing a 3-year deal. And if you decide you want to go to Mizzou because you hate Georgia now, well, Georgia might say, okay, you can go to Mizzou. You won't be playing football, but you can go there.
I think that sounds eminently reasonable, to be honest with you. Because like you said, this is for star players.
Mm-hmm.
This is for guys who you're going to try and build your team around, to take your shot around, and you're going to commit to paying them big money. You're going to recruit on the basis of, like, this is our guy under center right here for the next 3, maybe 4 years. And I also feel like these are adults.
Yes.
Maybe they're surrounded by, I mean, they're young adults, granted, and maybe they're surrounded by people who aren't giving them the best advice. Before we came on, we were talking about your boy who wound up at UCLA, ding dong.
Yeah. Yeah, I spent all that time learning how to say. I spent all that time learning how to say Iamaleava just to not need it anymore. Can you believe it? Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know, and I also feel like, man, the amount of money that's getting spent now.
Yes.
I don't know. I
guess
some accountability. I mean, I know it's hard to evaluate players. Granted, it's hard to evaluate players, but man, are the economics of this sustainable?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. And I was not super thrilled with some of the choices that Mizzou made. I'm super thrilled with their new signing. Super thrilled about that. But the Bo Prabula thing, that drove me completely crazy. And Drink was never asked a single question like, so how did you make the decision to pay him $1.5 million to come play quarterback here when he can't throw the football? Not one question. Not one question. That is like the best defense and run game I've ever seen at that school. And if we could have had even the 50th best passing game or 60th best passing game, like, we'd have been in, man. We'd have been in. It was so bad and painful and horrible to watch. And here's the thing. Mizzou's coaching staff, which here I am, alum, watch every game. Gates and Drink together, they're top 10 in salary.
Yeah.
I don't see a top 10 basketball team or a top 10 football team. So I feel like questions need to be asked here.
Sure. Absolutely. We're running out of time, so I want to make sure that we have time for the last couple of little things. All I'll say to finish that point, because I feel like we could do a whole other episode where we just talk about college. I know for a fact we could. All I'll say is that I always refer to this issue as killing the golden goose, precisely because we had 120 years of college football, and it went from some club sport to what the whole nation loved. And we didn't have all this. And now this radical change to the way the sport is put together in such a small period of time. Why would you want to risk destroying an entire institution like American college football over such ridiculous things? But they've done it. They've plowed light speed ahead into areas that I feel like, I mean, look at the bowl games now, like with the playoffs. No one cares about the bowl games because of when the transfer portal is. Nobody, you don't even know who's going to show up to the field in December. The team doesn't, you've already mentioned, the team doesn't even look in basketball from one year to the next. It's not the same team. In football, it's not the same team from the end of the regular season to the bowl game. It's not even the same team. I just can't believe that is what we want. I cannot believe that that's what we want. But with that said, I know this is what people do want. Before we get to the bonus round, Joseph, where can people go to support you and check out more of your content?
Okay, so I write a weekly article every Thursday at the Libertarian Institute, which you can always go check out. I do a bi-weekly piece at the Mises Institute on the Wire. I've been putting stuff up on the Libertarian Institute's blog as well. I put out a book of selected essays. These were just random things. Like, they're really long and kind of academic-y, but if you're interested in like the causes and consequences of the 30 Years' War and like evolutions in European diplomatic practice during the 19th century, like just stuff like that. Got the new book, which should be coming out in the next month or two. I'll be sure to put that up on the Twitter when it's there. But yeah, I'm on Twitter at Solis_Mullen, where I try to be thoughtful and polite. So that's pretty much it.
Perfect.
My brand isn't suited to Twitter, I don't think.
Well, speaking of your brand, much to the chagrin of the likes of people like Kyle Lanzalone or Patrick McFarlane, you currently, it may be only after a couple of attempts, but you currently reign supreme as the only undefeated guest when it comes to the bonus round questions. Are you ready?
Feeling the pressure.
Are you ready? Triple or nothing? Okay. Are you ready for round 3? All right.
I'm ready.
All right. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to visualize this. All right. Imagine you're getting yourself a nice big salad at a nice restaurant, and it's and think of what this is what it's got in now. It's got some nice fresh lettuce. Maybe you got some diced onions and some tomatoes in there. Maybe you like to have some protein. Maybe you get a little bacon bits, something like that in there. Oh, we can't leave out the carbs. Don't you listen to Kennedy? We can't leave out the carbs. So, you imagine you've got your croutons and that sort of thing. So you've got your protein, you got your carbs, you got all your leafy greens. With all of that said, Joseph, are nachos a salad?
Talking like a nacho supreme here.
Mm-hmm. Are nachos a salad?
Supreme. Like a nacho supreme with the lettuce and the onions and the tomatoes.
If that's the nachos you have in front of you, so be it. Are they a salad?
Golly, because taco salad is a thing and chicken salad is a thing. Yeah, I guess nachos could be a salad.
That is correct. Nachos are indeed a salad. Joseph is now 3-0. Oh, you were sweating it. I saw that. 3-0 on the program.
I knew it was coming.
Joseph, okay. Thank you so much for this. I had a great time, and I guess we're gonna have to do a whole nother show where we do nothing but talk about college sports.
Sounds good,
guys. We're gonna be back to wrap up the show right after this commercial break. Don't go away. If you're enjoying tonight's show, consider supporting the program by becoming a member of our Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Alan Mosley. Like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Alan Mosley TV. You can follow me on Twitter. It's twitter.com/Alan Mosley TV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/Alan Mosley TV. But if you're more of a listener than a watcher, you get us on your favorite podcasting platform choice thanks to Spotify. It's Too Late with Alan Mosley or Alan Mosley TV. Don't forget to get your tickets to the 8th annual It's Too Late live show, Saturday, May 16th in beautiful Columbia, Tennessee. or not. You know, it's like,
I guess
but
really
it's
up to them,
but it's gonna be your loss if you don't, because we're gonna have a blast.
one way or another.
Yeah,
gonna make it
Boy,
happen,
me and
Captain.
Dave, we are going out in a blaze this year.
Oh no.
Yeah, this is it. This is the live show that we've been orchestrating for like 4 years at this point, I think. It's going to be
Yeah.
something.
It's gonna be the one we've been talking about the whole time.
Yeah. It's very humid in Tennessee, says Ryan. It isn't right now, you know, but probably will be then.
Yeah.
Dave, do you have a final thought?
I don't know. Great show. A lot of fun. I think we did great. I think everybody had a good time. Glad they showed up.
I think so.
Always nice.
I'm glad too. But are we doing an after party?
Oh, we didn't even talk about that. Yeah, I mean, at least for the upload, right? I could go either.
Yeah, I guess so.
Whatever.
Guess we're doing an after party, you guys. The after party is on
All
twitch.tv/Alan Mosley TV. But until then, guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of It's Too Late, and we will see you next week. I'm proud of us because I keep telling people next week, but we actually are showing up next week. Because for like 6 months there, it was kind of whatever. It's a little touch and go. Yeah. Sometimes we'd be next week, sometimes it'd be next month. Who knows? Yeah, but it's next week. Next week. Yeah, for real. Are we? You can't drop questions on me like this in the literal milliseconds before the credits stop scrolling. You know what I mean?